of course, taking into account a like more complex behavior, like verbal behavior from like relational frame theory. Well, we know that now the causes are not necessarily in the consequences, they are in the antecedents as well.
Welcome back to Act Root to Fruit. My name is Marcel Tassara, and I'm on a quest to dig up the roots of the contextual behavioral sciences. This is a podcast about getting deeper into the behavioral underpinnings of acceptance and commitment therapy, functional analytic psychotherapy, clinical behavior analysis, all of the therapies that fall into the contextual behavioral sciences. My agenda here is how can us clinicians have a deeper appreciation of function. So what I'm after here is speaking to some of these luminaries to get some insight and some guidance on how to be more effective, how to intervene and be precise with my interventions, in hopes that you listening follow along with me on this journey. If you've been following along, I appreciate that. And if you're new, appreciate you too. Feel free to subscribe or like, review. One of my primary motivations for doing this project and this podcast is to be helpful. Just imagining a world where more clinicians are basing their interventions on function. And so if your interest is in getting there and would like to do so in a group setting, hit me up. Organizing some training groups to do some experiential work and some didactic work around these principles of what I've been getting at here. So excited to be joined today by one of the hardest working people that I know, Dr. Luisa Canon. She's a clinical behavior analyst and licensed psychologist in California, working out of California. She works still where she got her master's degree at the University of Nevada at Reno as a graduate advisor, and is very active in ACBS, co-chair of the upcoming 2022 World Conference in San Francisco. She's the founder and director of Act to Thrive, a center dedicated to the provision of ACT-focused training, consultation, and treatment services, and is a co-founder and director of research for the Institute for Effective Behavioral Interventions. It's a organization that provides state-of-the-art behavioral intervention for children with autism. And she works a lot in consultation with BCBAs who are looking to expand their practice. So, without further ado, Dr. Luisa Canon.
How like all the work that I'm doing right now has led me to observe how people are continuously like in the midst of the growth of ACT, right? Mm-hmm. and the interest that I continually see people trying to go to the script, to go to what do I say next, to that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so and everything is like detached from the principles, from the roots.
Okay.
And my work has been disseminating behavior analysis and telling people what does it really mean to think behaviorally and like functionally in the room, and with a perspective of, I guess, not knowing, not really having to prepare yourself to be to know what to say, to the client when you are there, because you don't know what's going to happen, because the future hasn't come yet, right?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of like, to me, liberating approach where you don't, where really you don't have to know, you just have to be there, present, listening, connecting with your senses, right, to what's happening in front of you.
Okay.
So in observing all those, that has been my I guess my work, right? Trying to help others during consultations and mentorship to cultivate that, to learn to create a space for the right things to happen, not the right, the workable things to happen. So
so you are sprouted from that foundation. Your plant started there, and so
yes.
you feel like that gave you the good backing, to go
Exactly.
grounded from there to where you want to go.
Exactly. Yes, and that started in Bogota, Colombia. That's where I am from,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went to Conrad Lawrence University, and I think it continues to be the behavior. I mean, the university with the most or the heaviest behavioral approach
Okay.
in Bogota. And yeah, that was first semester reading Skinner and in Spanish, the available translations back then.
Hmm.
um, so that has been my journey since, and I and then yes, when I was exposed to other things, I had a huge difficulty. Like, what are you talking about? But
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't notice at the time, but now I do see how I was so. I mean, obviously, you know, the rules that you create around this is the lens through which I see the world, and this is the lens through which I understand people and behavioral phenomena, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I take those lenses and then wear others, right? I didn't understand how other people could not have a lens. I
Yeah.
mean, they did have one, probably they could not describe or talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely it wasn't the same lens that I was looking at things or,
Yeah.
you know, from. So,
Okay. And that obviously directs how you dance now.
yes, exactly.
And what do you think will be, what of that is important to you now, or what where should we start around these roots? What do you think is a good starting place?
Well, I think that maybe we should start with, I guess, with pragmatism, with with behavior analysis, functional
Mm-hmm.
analysis. I think that's something that is becoming more prominent in ACBS. I think there is now a space for that. I feel there is a space for that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked the other day, I do a lot of consultations and mentorship, and not only to behavior analysts who want to learn about ACT and other CBA's approaches, but also clinical psychologists and mental health professionals. So something that I see that is lacking there is that functional part, right? That tendency of I guess looking at how things look like rather than how they work or how they function for themselves and for the person they're working with. That's something that I have been very interested in doing, is disseminating behavior analysis. And I do recognize that I don't have the most I guess simplest way of talking or talking about things in general, right? um, it is almost like I can tell you how things are read on the book, right? Like I don't have that simplicity, right?
Okay.
There's many people in the field who are very skilled at talking about the same things in simple language. So
Yeah.
that's not one of my strengths. Um, and I think it
You
has to
hung out with
do.
Linda too long.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I wish I could say that I was like really connected to that back in like in the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my English repertoire wasn't, I guess, fully developed.
Yeah.
And I think I kept part of my head busy thinking, how do I do to, you know, like to understand this better? Am I
Mm-hmm.
making myself clear? Am I understanding these complex things, right? Reading was easier, but listening and talking was another, you know, thing. um, but anyway, I guess yes, and I do experience that when I talk to people that are not you know, behavior analysts. They tell me, you use so much jargon, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's just my, you know, that's just the
Mm-hmm.
simple way, that's my way of talking. And yes, maybe that the influence of hearing everybody talk about, you know, those terms and those, you know, complex ideas. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So you were saying that your specialty is not mainstreaming or
Not at all.
yeah. Yeah. So how do you work, and how do you help people see function?
well, this is something that I have been doing for the last, I guess, for the last year or couple of years, is I do attend trainings from people that I have listened to before, and they are so clear in the way of explaining things.
Mm-hmm.
So I attend trainings, and you have no idea the million of aha moments that I have when I listen to them. I just think, like, how come I didn't think of that before? That way of saying the same thing, right? So that has helped me kind of build that simplicity around the way in which I explain things, and the examples that I give and things of that sort. But I think the way I explain function is simply by asking you right now, like, I'm sure that you have something in mind to ask me. So what do you intend to accomplish with that question you're going to ask next, right? So instead of going, obviously, conceptually speaking, going about it, but I will just take I guess a sample of what's your current behavior and ask you what you intend by doing what you're going to do, right? To start to introduce the concept of function.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's how I do it, rather than actually talking about so much behavior always happening in a particular space and time, and always be preceded by an antecedent and followed by a consequence event, etc., etc. And that goes later, but I want people experientially being in contact with that in the moment.
Yeah.
To get it there, hopefully. So
okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've been thinking about in terms of what you just said is the difference between like the consequences of an act versus the intent of the act. Like let me say it, like the outcome versus the intention. And I think that I at times have gotten a little bit cloudy around how, what as a clinician is more important to pay attention to when I'm thinking about function.
Okay, so I think that we got into causality.
Yeah.
And so in behavior analysis, traditional behavior analysis, right? The causes are located. Well, I'm not sure if located is the right word, but you find the causes in the consequences, right? According to Skinner, for instance. So you don't explain why somebody did something because of because of what happened before the antecedents, but because of what they learned, right? And only by being exposed later to similar conditions, then you will understand what did occur in there, if reinforcement or punishment or whatever. So, but of course, taking into account a more complex behavior, like verbal behavior, and I guess the understanding about how it all works from relational frame theory and all this. Well, we know that now the causes are not necessarily in the consequences, they are in the antecedents as well. If antecedents we refer to as rules and rules that I guess we derive or just we learn, right? So rules govern behavior and all this kind of thing. So we know that we not only now learn by consequences, by relating and again, yes, by rules. So there's a place also of that in the antecedents. I mean, I don't know if that was, maybe I made a mistake out of it.
So it's broadening out from just looking at the what was learned or what the outcome was.
Yes, exactly. So, but we talk about direct contingency management, right? So I arrange the environment in a way to make your behavior more likely to occur in the future by presenting a particular set of stimuli. And I know that if I deliver or a particular consequence, it's going to have an effect on your behavior. And then we will know, or we will say, we will be able to state, right, that you engage in a particular behavior because this particular consequence was delivered upon your behavior occurring. But taking that into a more contextual approach, where it's not the management of the direct management of the environment, right? and the behavior there. When we talk about context and when we talk about language as context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I think there is a place of causality in terms of how is that we also learn. It's not necessarily by consequences, but again by the rules, right? But why the rules say, even we are not, even though we're not in contact with the contingencies that the rule describes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a place of causality now in the other aspect too, not only consequences but antecedents as well,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way we respond.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that helpful? Maybe
Yeah,
not.
it's helpful to set the stage, and I guess I'm just thinking about your comment in terms of asking someone what what were you hoping for with what you said or what you did, kind of. That sounds like it's fishing more for the motivation than like helping them to see what they actually got. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you were to you were to say something, let's say a joke, you were to make a joke, and I found it offensive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcome is for me, and maybe other people, like just for me, is that I'm offended by the joke. But your motivation for telling the joke is to maybe ingratiate yourself, or many things it could be. Like you see that I don't really like you too much, and you want to kind of get me to like you, or millions of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So what? And yes, I think I understand your point. So it has to it is tightly linked to what you're looking for, right? But one thing is one thing is your intention and what you need and want, right? And what you're looking for. Another one is what you produce by behaving in a particular way. And that's what I guess brings us to, I guess, being aware and like being sensitive to what's really happening in there, right? Because again, your intention can be one, but what you produce by behaving, informed by that intention is another thing.
Yeah.
And that is one aspect that that also it's I think is crucial. I think it's one of the most important things in the clinical work and in the work with consultees and mentorees. It is to teach, not to teach necessarily, but to guide them into observing what happens when they respond in one way or another way, right? To what is the intention and how that works out. What is really happening? How do you observe you are affecting the other person's behavior by what you did, right?
Yeah.
And the outcomes of that. I mean, according to, I guess, an ultimate goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something unique, do you think, about CBS and clinical behavior, or just behavior analysis, and maybe clinical behavior analysis that is very different from what they're doing at La Javeriana?
I am not sure that La Javeriana is
I'm joking. I'm not going to try to pull you into controversy. I just
thank you so much. Thank you. I do appreciate that. I also don't want to get in trouble, although I like trouble, but maybe not this morning. Too early to start with trouble. I think around
trouble when you're trying to get into trouble, maybe, right? Not an accident.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I think that I don't think that people know what, I guess, the assumptions are, like in the context of ACT, what is the stance that you need to take, or that not that you need, but that if you were to take, it will probably work better with with in combination with the other assumptions. I think that if you think about it, every single book in ACT, right, has a chapter on contextual behavior science and functional analysis, and I am not sure that people read them, or maybe they read them, but I don't think that there is some contact there with the importance of that. I think that one thing, again, is reading about it, knowing about it, and another thing is embodying that. Like, for instance, in terms of, I guess, as we talked before, given the growing interest in ACT and people wanting to do ACT, and so many models and, I guess, exemplars, right? Great ones that we have, and I want to do this, or I want to learn that, or I wish I could sound like this, or like this person, etc. And there is so much emphasis on, and that's something that I see, right? Also in social media. What exercise do you guys recommend? So for this client who is engaging in this behavior, what metaphor? And I think I worry about those kind of questions. Where is the functional, the pragmatic aspect in there? So I worry about that. And I worry about, I guess, yes, conducting like more topographical analysis and intervening based on topographical analysis, or observing the behavior to look like in a particular, form, shape, whatever, and then categorizing it with a process or particular ACT repertoire, and then intervening based on that, not based on how is it working for the person and how is it working, for you, or what is showing up for you when the person brings that to you, right? Because obviously there is a whole, interaction of both in there. So that's one of my worries. And again, my work the last years has been disseminating, disseminating the perspective of people have attended, workshops, gone to trainings. They know the Hexaflex, I guess, from A to Z, right? They do concern, they do get worried about, okay, after this one, what's next? And how come if I'm doing this, it also feel like I was doing this? Why processes overlap, or, these kind of things, right? And like my what I want, and to my work to continue to be, is to get people far away from that, to get some distance enough that they are able to really be the humans that they are in the room, and to not know it, but to model. I mean, if you think about it, we are, as therapists, the best tool that is there in the moment to shape the behavior of the client in the moment. And if we don't use ourselves in that regard, then what are we doing, right? So I think that getting distance from the different models, I don't use any in particular. I started with Hexaflex, and I saw how that organized my behavior initially, but I also saw how it disorganized it later on, right? By falling into the same traps that a few people that at least I see and observe and that I work with are falling into. So this is more about getting, like, trusting that you know enough, right? That your purpose is to, as I guess Kirk Strossel in your wonderful podcast the other day, he said, well, I thought that therapists need to really acquire a lot of difficult, like complex skills. But in reality, all what you're doing is trying to make the person behave different, like behavioral variability. And like, isn't that liberating? Isn't that liberating in the sense that you don't have to go to this repertoire or this other repertoire? You just have to have the person respond differently. So and so my idea is kind of on the same lines. Yes, that's the ultimate goal. But how do you convey that in the session, right? How do you model that? And the modeling is about I mean, isn't that the first, to me, the first kind of, a stage, or not a stage? I don't want to talk about the stages or the steps, but like the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you to really see how I handled my stuff and your stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel that I'm going, like, I'm climbing up on this branch, and I'm hoping that I'm gonna get back to the center, but
What's
I
the
don't know.
center?
The center
The center is passion. I feel that about this.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's helpful to hear. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess the center, it is know your north, right?
Mm-hmm.
And get away from all the branches that can be distracting, and the stories about those branches that can probably get bigger in the room that you want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really be sensitive to what's happening in there, not
Okay.
in terms of content, but just everything that is happening.
And so I heard in your share there that you have passed through some different stages in your metabolism of these technologies,
Yeah.
the CBS approaches, and I can relate a lot to that, kind of, maybe going to a workshop and trying to be Kelly Wilson after the workshop, or going to another workshop and, trying to be
Yes.
certain people,
Mm-hmm.
or, really what am I working on now? What process are we working on now? And I don't know. I get the sense that that's part of the process of getting to a more process. How do I say? It feels like for a lot of people, that's how we arrive to being more flexible in the room with what's showing up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I mean, the embodying, the embodying is like, part of that, what I'm hearing you say is turning these things inside.
Exactly. And I think is those things that we read again in chapters of books, or that we see as the first slides in people's trainings and workshops, right? Like, you're not the expert of the client's experience. It's the client who is the expert of his own experience, right? Those kind of things. You are there as, as someone that is out of the picture and the situation, like the pain, right? And so therefore you can see stuff that the person can see in the moment. If there's so much, I guess, dominance of rules or verbal content, etc., is that it is being okay with messing up. It is being okay with, I guess, creating a space for a mess to happen, for uncertainty, and to model that, because that's how it's going to go for the client too. It's not that you get your tools and then you go on life like, okay, I have my bag of tools and it's fine, I have them and then I use them, and no, it's going to be messy, and you're always going to find yourself stuck, no matter how much you use them, right? I mean, definitely the more you practice, probably it might be the case that you might more quickly get out of or get to notice that you are right now under the control of those rules, and that those are organizing your behavior in ways that is not helpful to you, according to what you love or are going after, right? Ongoingly. So it is, I think it is that I find difficulty in setting up that space, in being there and trying to fix, not to create a context where a lot of beautiful things can happen, right? And I mean, I think all this has to do with the same, with ideas of CBS and again, behavior analysis, which is, is a huge part of it, right? Not this emphasis on fixing the problem or coming to session thinking, okay, how am I going to help the client? Last time I was stuck doing this or that, but like, go blank and just observe and feel and like breathe, like what's like everything that is in front of you, right? And be that human and model being that human who makes mistakes and who is lost and who at some point, like, I don't know what to do here, but I only wish we find this space to do the work, for you to find, that, connection to the things that are important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's holding the client by the hand, right? And going through this roller coaster together. That's it.
Yeah.
Without having to know or compare or categorize. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Just being very sensitive and attentive to how that change from aversive control, I guess, to appetitive control shifts in the room, or not shifts. What am I saying? Shifts in the room.
Mm-hmm. So the embodiment in the room, there's it's not tight. It's kind of it doesn't have, things don't have to be a certain way.
Exactly. They don't. It is whatever happens there.
Mm-hmm.
It is not knowing. It is sitting in that uncertainty of, I don't know, but I will know as I am there with the client in the work.
Okay.
That's all you need to know.
Okay.
I think that's all I think that's all what's helpful.
Yeah.
And to call it out. If you see it's not going the direction, then to call it out. Not sitting in your head, oh, this didn't work. So what's next? What am I supposed to say or do? Let me see. Let me look through the files of metaphors and exercises. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it is, well, I can see that this didn't, my intention was to do this, or to get you to get to this place, and it didn't work. Maybe let's step back. Maybe let's pause. Actually, and again, as I'm saying it, is that I model it. I do pause and I notice you and what you do. And then I notice myself and like my behavior. And I notice the space and I look around, right? And it's shifting that attention constantly and modeling that, right? And curiosity, being curious about what I'm observing, right?
Yeah.
And I guess encouraging you to be curious about what's happening, even if we are both lost, and we have no idea what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's sit in that space and be curious.
Yeah, that's something
right?
that I've been paying attention to a lot in how I ask questions of clients, and I think that it's easy for me to ask with a certain kind of certainty, like I know what the answer is, and I want to make sure that I am bringing kind of an open curiosity to the wonders that I have.
Yes. And I think that's that's, as always, right? It's something that is something that you can set for yourself, when you are there.
Mm-hmm.
And to sometimes, I know this is probably, it is obviously part of my experience. And what happens is that, and as I relate to what you're saying, I ask questions and I kind of know what the answer is going to be. And I remind myself in that time, like, I want to ask questions about things that I don't know. And for sure, I really don't know how it feels for you, what you're going through, or a particular, experience, how you experience a particular stimulus.
Yeah.
And I want to get as close as possible to feel that, right? And something that it helps me, and I don't know if you do therapy in Spanish or not, but well, certainly I do in English. In Spanish, it flies. It's fun, right? I don't have to think much, I guess, but it's awesome. And in English, when the clients talk about things that I like, really, I have not heard like words. At the beginning, I wish I had my dictionary there, or I wish I had some, magic Google microphone translator, right?
Yeah.
And because I was embarrassed to say, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that?
Yeah,
in terms of language.
I felt that.
Right?
But I'm immediately taken back to one of the first clients I had when I first started doing therapy, who he got upset with me because I didn't know what manicomio was. I asked him, well, what is manicomio? Because I never heard that word. And he was like, oh, okay, now we're going to have to do therapy in English then. Like basically punishing me for,
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, that was nothing to do with what you're talking about. But.
No, it does. But what I want to do right now is like take your example and my example and shift it in a way to make us not wanting to really know for the sake of knowing and then carry on with the conversation, but knowing because I want to know what you mean by that. Right? So not knowing, even when clients talk about things or they say phrases or I guess phrasal verbs you call them, or they use a slang or whatever, right? I'm clueless. Like I want to play the role of a fool here. Like I might not know, or I really don't know. Like, would you tell me what do you mean by this?
No.
And they might go verbally, talking about that. But I want to know, okay, well, how, I want to know more than words, right? Walk me through that. So I think in a way it's an advantage not to know all English, right? Or for you not to know all Spanish. Because navigating through those, you are automatically put in this place where you don't know it all, right? And you have to ask questions, and you are really like curious, but again, curious as to have not an understanding to find the meaning and then carry on, but to stay with that, right? And when it comes to the client's experience, so I think it's lovely. I mean, right now I used to see it as, oh my God, why? Like, I hate when this happens. I want my dictionary. I want to know English, blah, blah, blah. And now it's lovely because it's an opportunity for me to ask, to know in the moment, right? So
and model a lot, and it's interesting how we're, when we're new, we kind of overcompensate our insecurities with a tightness and a assurance, that maybe sets up the stage where I can ask, because, and then when I do, they're like, oh, wait a minute, these last 3 weeks, what else did you not understand, But when there's a looseness, I one thing I picked up along the way in this approach that the contextual behavioral approach is that, setting the stage early on, like, hey, if I say something that isn't, you're not understanding or it doesn't fit, let me know. Like, it's gonna be really helpful for me to know when something isn't landing with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like that about the setting the stage, right? But also not relying on it, not relying on the person telling you, but you having your eyes very wide open, right? And to notice when things are not landing, because a lot of clients can be there. I mean, like,
and I'm going to generalize here, but especially depending on the cultural context you're working in too. But I mean, that I think in Latin American cultures, to get some feedback as the person in charge like that it's not gonna come naturally most of the times. My experience.
Exactly. Yeah, in mine too.
Yeah.
So there's other types of things that I guess take place in there, right?
Yeah, I had made a kind of a generalization about several continents, people, and getting feedback.
Exactly. No, and yes, I think we're on the same page. Yes. Yeah. So it is hard not to. It is hard not to. I mean, I do work with everyone and with people from different cultures. But I think yes, that overgeneralization part is hard, Like I have to sit and tell myself, like, it's kind of like I want to raise it and just, but then of course I come into contact with that and I'm like, okay, well, this overgeneralization is quite accurate. As I see, as I come into contact with new clients.
Well, it's interesting. We're talking about assuming, like, no, like, like with this language situation, assuming that I know, right? Like, how often have I heard someone say, I feel a certain way. They use a word. Let's say they say sadness, and I assume I know what they mean by that because I speak English and because we're both from, the same area or whatever.
Exactly.
And this. I think it's a really important point about this humility to really not like unearth what is the qualitative experience of that, regardless of
Exactly. How
what
do
we
you
think we know.
experience it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So,
Now, but here's the thing, though. What I wanted to go
mhm,
back to was when someone is omitting, it's different. It's there's a when they're not giving, they're you're
mhm,
they're not describing, like we said in this example where it's like, they didn't say that they were misunderstood, or there's a void of information there. I don't know if
mhm.
there's anything there. Is that stirring up anything for you?
I think sometimes it is a matter of skill deficit. I guess it could be in some cases. I have found that myself when when you know clients really don't know how to describe their experience. They only know two categories, and they don't even know words for sensations, or
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a repertoire to tact,
Mm-hmm.
but they observe, right? So it has to do sometimes with that. But I also have found that, yeah, that it has to do with really like a difficulty of like being aware and contacting that space that you're trying to create for them, right? I think I guess in the Latino culture, it's very common to find that people don't go to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they just talk it out with friends, or they go to church, or they
Mm-hmm.
just solve things within the family, right? And so when they come and talk to you, then everything becomes like a physical medical problem. I have a pain over here, and then my head aches, and the other day I had my stomach upset, and so you already know, what's kind of going on, right? And to try to bring that as like in the context of,
Mm-hmm.
their suffering, their pain, it is quite the work, right? For them to acknowledge
Yeah.
that is one possibility there. I don't know, for some reason I felt that I just went to another different branch, but I trust that you redirect my scatteredness and cuckoo-ness
Yeah.
that shows up in.
Maybe you're scattering with me. You're scattering with my scatteredness. So we'll blame me. Um, well, I'm wondering about what else. There was some other things that you had there on that I'm wondering that what else is there that is feeling vital to you right now about.
Let me see. Trying to think. I mean, we kind of cover the pragmatic part, the functional pragmatic aspect. We did talk
Yeah.
about behavior in context, right? And how the clinician
Yeah.
is part of that context. Um, we did talk about also, I think those were, let me see, what else did we talk about? Well, not knowing, right? Versus
Not
knowing.
knowing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how that is useful and liberating from,
Yeah.
any attachment to any model and any script, right? So,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm. Well, I guess, did we talk about in that in that aspect of knowing by doing and knowing by being there experientially, not by knowing about or like how the I guess well, all what shows up for people when they have to tact or like describe or like kind of bring to the room, right? That particular response from the client that seems to be under aversive control, right? as I guess
Mm-hmm.
Emily Sanders will say, the snake in the room. I love that.
Yeah.
So yes, and how I don't know. I'm not sure if it is useful to go into that, but to what extent people do the work they need to do in order to bring the snake into the room a million times, if that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Versus bringing it once and then putting it back in the cage and then observing it just from a distance, right? I don't know. I don't know if that is useful to talk about that, but I could probably share that. I think that is one of my. I think that is the funnest, things to do in the session, while keeping obviously this place of compassion and love, right? But I think that when I am in session and I don't bring the snake out of the cage, I feel like I am, I don't know, like probably in a state of stupor or something, like there is nothing feels like really vivid, and I don't know. I do.
No.
I
kind
think
of like in the head, very analytical kind of talk.
Yes, and like very well. I do tend to be. My default is fast, everything fast, and I talk fast and breathe fast, and everything is fast. But when I'm in session, that's a whole different thing, right? Those are the only instances under which I can be more like slow and calm, and probably I won't even blink as much as I blink normally. But definitely getting. I think when I get into a session, my first thing is, like, I'm excited to take the snake out of the cage, and I am willing to take it as many times as I need to. And I do tell my clients that, like at the beginning, this is how our work together could look like, right? So I tell them in advance, this is not going to be. I mean, obviously, you're taking into account that the client feels comfortable, but not comfortable to inadvertently reinforce, the avoidance pattern or anything. But I get it that not everybody's going to go to the same pace. But definitely, I do tell them about creating a lot of opportunities for them to sit with them, for both of them to look at it, to probably be able to pet it at some point, right? And that it's going to be it's going to be intense. And I do remind them that they are there paying me money. That probably if we were not doing that, or they were to agree with just talking and being listened, and maybe that's something they can do with their friends. They don't have to pay them money for that. So, but yeah, the work is going to be intense, but it's going to be it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I think they get to see the possibilities.
Yeah.
And that is enormous for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The qualitative difference between talking about something versus kind of like you say, handling the snake it's a big difference. It's a big difference.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah. And I can tell you like that, when I've been in therapy and I've been in with someone who doesn't practice a CBS approach, what I've appreciated the most is those times where I was, given permission and walk through, guided through some of what we're talking about here, rather than kind of talking about something over there and something that's, describing something,
I think I will think, or I would like to think, that people will like right away see the contrast and feel that they are that there's another floor where they are standing on, and I guess, yes, I mean, you describe how even does feel to talk about or to tell the same story that you have probably told. Apologize for the alarm. I have like 1,000 alarms, and this one was to feed my dog.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm a new mommy, so.
What kind of dog do you have?
Siberian Husky.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he is a handful. Yes, yeah, I love him. Actually, he has gotten me away from my addiction to work and plan and be such a control freak.
Yeah.
I have like instant mindfulness like moments with him, so it's
Nice.
awesome. Yeah.
Nice. You're talking about working from the heart.
Yes.
But this information has come to you. It's, I mean, when you're undergrad and on through your master's degree with Linda Hayes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna assume it was up here.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. And so, as you know, I'm. That's how the information's entering my organism as well. And sometimes I wonder, like, how do I know that I'm working functionally if I'm not constantly paying attention to the A's and the C's and the contingencies and so as I hear you say what you're saying, I feel you, but like there's a part of me that's like, but I have to know, how, like be thinking in a certain way and in the room, and then I sometimes I do that, and sometimes so that's my question for you, and you can answer whatever you hear in there that seems might be helpful.
Yes, of course, Marcel. So you're right. I have spent a lot of years of my life, studying and being very mindy and having to come to this place where I am now, in which I want to, like, the embodiment of, I guess, these assumptions and principles, right? I guess one thing is having been in contact with that for so long makes me not be so attentive to every single element, right, of the contingencies. Something that has been helpful has been making a lot of mistakes, like thousands of mistakes. Trying to actually be attentive of all those things and catching those has made me not be that human that I want to be. And I have contacted reinforcement by being who I am. And I guess, well, the knowledge is there, right? And the practice and the experience. So I don't know how to tell you in one sentence, how do I guess it's impossible.
It's like a 3-day podcast if you want me to just keep going.
Maybe, right? Yes. But I mean, knowing your basics, I guess, I think probably holding onto some rules, right? About what is my north here, what is my role here as as a therapist with this client, right? I always have something that is like my default, and that is to pause. And to pause, and to notice, and to allow, and to choose. That's kind of like my fourth thing. And that is what gets me always back in track, right? Of not being like too mindy and just being that person and model that. Because isn't that, I mean, that's what I do anyways. And that's how I do get unstuck. And that's how I teach people to get unstuck. And so yes, I guess holding on to those rules lightly too, because also they can, backfire. Sometimes there is sometimes it's not going to be, I guess, workable, right, or helpful that you do those. But yeah, it is really noticing noticing what happens when I say this, noticing if your posture, everything, like how that is landing on you, right? Without having to think, okay, my behavior was an stimulus for the person, and so the consequence, like all this kind of thing. But by being busy doing that, you're missing on a lot of data that is happening there in front of you, and that you can use to,
Okay.
To do what's best next.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what I'm hearing there that is I think generalizable is that we can assume that most of the people who come to see us aren't taking moments to pause to see what's there, and
Exactly.
when we provide that, ¿qué tal si terminamos hablando en español
Oh, sería
por
perfecto,
unos 2-3
maravilloso.
minutos sobre
Uf,
todo lo
claro,
que hemos sí mejor?
claro que
Okay.
sí, mejor.
So, ¿cómo podemos terminar en español hablando de este tema? Y
Podríamos tal vez decir que, bueno, tal vez decirle a la audiencia, ¿verdad? Que ellos ya saben lo que tienen que saber, ¿verdad? Ya han estudiado mucho, leído mucho, que ahora es tiempo de separarse un poco de los libros, de los libros, ¿verdad? Ser ellos mismos y aparecerse en la sesión o con sus clientes o con las personas que trabajen como ellos, que modelen lo que es este tipo de trabajo, que sientan en su propia piel qué es hacer este tipo de trabajo,
sí.
que lo modelen, lo animen y ya. Y creo que eso es lo más importante. Y siempre pensar el porqué de todo, no el
Okay.
cómo, el porqué.
So, el por qué.
Exactamente.
El por qué.
El porqué.
Pensando funcionalmente.
Exactamente. Es cada cosa que tú haces, cada cosa que la persona dice, hace. ¿Por qué me está diciendo esto? ¿Por qué está haciendo esto? Porque si lo está siendo reforzado, ¿verdad? ¿Mm? Entonces ahí te vas a dar cuenta por qué camino coges para intervenir, ¿sí? Para empezar a entender, a intervenir.
Okay. Y las técnicas, no tenemos que poner las técnicas a un lado.
Ponerlas.
No siempre, pero a veces.
Exactamente. Es más, usar lo que tú tienes enfrente tuyo para hacer tus propios ejemplos, tus propias metáforas. Al final, el proceso, la parte de, esa parte de cómo vas a influir o generar una influencia, un efecto sobre el comportamiento o el contexto, ¿verdad? En el cual el comportamiento se da, es usar lo que la persona te está diciendo para llegar allá, sin tener que irte al libro, es entender la mecánica de la cosa, ¿me entiendes? Y irte por allá, más que tener que usar y adherirte a cómo dicen las cosas o cómo están en los libros. Es eso, es estar ahí, es de verdad conectarte con tus cinco sentidos, no mucho acá.
Ajá.
Y ¿sabes qué? Creer el proceso, creer en el cliente y creer el proceso. Y ya. Yo creo que eso sería como lo básico.
Yeah. Okay. So, después de leer, estamos hablando del segundo paso. Pues no sé si el segundo paso, pero el próximo paso de manifestar. ¿Cómo se dice? Manifestar.
Manifestar.
Esto en vivo con alguien.
Exactamente.
Los procesos y guiar a alguien por ese camino. Okay.
Exactamente.
Pues mira, me alegro mucho en que podíamos bailar esta bachata.
Ay, súper. Bachata. Divertido.
No, vallenato, debo decir, unos vallenatos. ¿No?
Bueno, el vallenato, sí, también.
No, pero sí, me alegro mucho y estoy muy agradecido que compartiste conmigo en tu segunda idioma y que vas a regresar cuando comienzo, en el segundo proyecto tengo, que podemos hablar sobre algo similar y sobre arte en español. Que creo que se va a llamar, creo que va a ser en contexto, act, fab y más. Algo así. ¿Qué te parece?
Contexto. Ok, me gusta. Porque en contexto está reuniendo las características de las tres tipos de terapias. En contexto. Sí. En contexto, act, fab y más. Me parece excelente.
Y gracias. Muchas gracias, Luisa.
Y Marcel, muchas gracias por haberme invitado y nada, pues fue súper hablar contigo y además hablar en los dos idiomas. Excelente.
Yeah.
Se siente libre,
Okay.
¿verdad?